This is Uncle Bob, and I'm glad you came back to the Story Corner here. And I'm really glad you're here because I've got something really important to talk to you about. And this is what it is. I love working with wood. And I know for a fact that I'm in good company because guess what? Jesus was a carpenter and he worked with wood. And that is a really cool thing. So we're going to talk a little bit about woodworking today and talk to you a little bit about how God works with us. Okay? So the first thing I want to show you is this. This is a log. I cut this off a tree. It was a branch and it's a piece of wood. You see the white ends? I just paint that so it doesn't dry so fast and crack. But I take a piece of wood like this and I put it on a machine called a lathe. Now a lathe is a very special machine and this is what it does. So I've got two people here, Chris and Brian, to help me out to pretend like they're my lathe, a woodworking lathe. Now this lathe takes a piece of wood like this and starts to spin it. And you can spin it as fast as you want. You don't have to do too fast, guys, but it spins it. And as it's spinning, I take a tool, a very sharp tool, and I start to do this as it's spinning, and all of a sudden, before you know it, bark is flying and wood chips are flying and everything's flying everywhere and it's getting dusty and messy. But this rough piece of wood turns into something like this. And what happens after a very short time is I'm using this very sharp tool and I'm sitting there working with that piece of wood, all the barks come off, and now it's starting to get a little bit smooth as this lathe turns it over and over again, and I'm using this sharp tool to knock off all the rough stuff. Now as I get going, I change my tool from a very sharp round gouge, that's what that's called, to a very sharp skew. And what you do with this skew is you start to make a little bit of a pattern in the wood, and you cut it here and chips are still flying. Not as many as before. It's becoming a little bit more fine woodworking, and you can make these little coves and all these beads, and you get it really smooth, and it just starts to take shape. But it takes a sharp tool to do that. Now, as I continue taking that wood off, I start to form it into something that's going to be useful. And I tell you what, that useful stuff is really cool because it's useful. You can use it to help you do something. And as I sit there and cut the wood off, and then I start to sand it smooth and make it look real shiny, I come up with something that might look like this. And what I've made here is actually a shoe horn. And it is really cool because it helps you put your shoe on. You put your foot in the shoe and you just push down and it slides your heel right in the shoe. Okay, lathe, you're done. You can go. But what I want to talk to you about is, think about this. If you were this piece of wood and the lathe was turning you and somebody put a really sharp tool on it to get rid of all the rough stuff, do you think that would hurt? Oh boy, do I ever. It would hurt. It would hurt big time. And sometimes when we're walking through life, God starts to work with us and he takes us in a rough place and he starts to smooth us out a little bit. And we become smoother in our life, meaning that we become more Christian and we start to talk about Jesus more and we start to do things that Jesus did. And then all of a sudden, he starts to mold us even more and turn us in and start to shape us into what he wants us to become. And then we become useful to him. The end product is that when we're Christians and we followed his way, he will change us to the point where we can do his work and he will use us. So boys and girls, remember, God is working with you and he's changing you from a very rough point to a very smooth and shiny young little Christian that can help him save people, and you can go tell people about him more and more each time. Thank you for coming to Uncle Bob's Story Corner, and we hope you show up next week. God bless. Bye.